Hello, everyone. Welcome to Introduction to Sacred Geometry. I'm Jeanie Dean, and I'll be presenting the program today. So let's go ahead and get started. So what do these images have in common? We see a face, a rose, and a seashell with a spiral on them. And here are some further images with a nautilus seashell, a galaxy in a spiral shape, the growth of a cactus, a sunflower, and a whirlpool of water. What do they have in common? It's the golden ratio, a constant of nature and a principle of sacred geometry. It is represented as the number phi, like pi, and it's 1.618. And we'll learn more about the golden ratio as we progress in our talk today. But let's go on. So our contents are: what is sacred geometry? What are the primary tools of esoteric learning? How this is an ancient knowledge and occult tradition, how it's applied in art, music, and architecture, self-knowledge and healing, the 6 foundation principles, some meditation practices on it, a bit about cycles of nature, time, and measure, and then a tour of some sites from sacred architecture. And that should take us through our program. Once again, thank you for being here and your interest in this amazing topic. So, what is sacred geometry? It is called a blueprint of geometric codes for the creation of all life forms. Well, that's a big mouthful. And by study and observation, one can start to see these patterns. It's an ancient science of the creative energy patterns. It's developed from math and counting systems and occult studies. It is a system of measures and timekeeping templates, and also a template for sacred ritual. It is a natural pattern of growth and movement in geometric forms. It is the study of cycles, progress, and cultural trends. The occult system of symbol and metaphor. So it's not just numerics, it's philosophical and spiritual as well. This is a glyph showing examples of some primary concepts in sacred geometry. At the top are 4 of the Platonic solids, and we'll learn about these as we go on. And the bottom row is starting with the Vesica Pisces, which is this shape when we intersect 2 circles, and a core working principle of sacred geometry in an era before rulers and straight edges and digital measure. And this form progresses into helping compute various other mathematical figures and ultimately into what we would call the seed of life or the flower of life icon here. And we'll get a sampler about this further as we go on. And for a sort of a brain cleanser, we can take a look at this wonderful image generated from principles of sacred geometry. Something like this can be a meditation focus, and it literally does help straighten out the mind, if you will. And that has Metatron's cube in the center. Quite beautiful. So are spiritual meanings encoded within the geometric symbols of sacred geometry? And yes, they are. It is a pattern of language, of mathematics. And sacred patterns are everywhere. They're fundamental universal templates. They encode a principle of unity of the visible and invisible world. And they provide us with geometric archetypes of vibratory resonance. And they're inseparable relationship between everything and everyone. So sacred geometry is somewhat related to unity and oneness. we can say more about that as we develop. The image on the left is a multicolored torus showing this pattern of energy that we would consider perhaps magnetic and very beautiful. This is Leonardo da Vinci's famous picture of the Vitruvian Man. And you notice that there's a square and circle indicated. Usually we don't notice that so much, but this image is showing the effort and the inquiry to square the circle. And again, we'll see this as we progress. So the study of sacred geometry has a long tradition. It was taught in Egypt and Babylon mystery schools 3,500 years ago. It was taught in the Greek mystery schools 2,500 years ago. It was taught in Rome, Byzantium, medieval Europe, the Muslim world, the Hindu Vedas, the Chinese hexagrams of the I Ching. And it continues as a classic esoteric study in Freemasonry, Kabbalah, Theosophy, Anthroposophy, Sufism, the work of Gurdjieff, and many others. And interestingly, there's some great contributions turning up in the last 10 years since we started our study 5-6 years ago. Some very interesting new works have emerged. But it is a lifelong study in a myriad of disciplines, and it's holistic in its approach. And finally, with such a long tradition, sacred geometry is definitely old school. And of course, we all love the new and quantum this and such that, but the principles are constants of nature, constants of life, and they give us a tremendous foundation for understanding the world. So does using sacred geometry improve life? Yes, it does. And the way it does is by studying forms and principles, by discerning these patterns and codes in the forms we study, by observing nature and life occurrences, and finding and recognizing patterns and principles, by contemplating sacred geometric shapes and codes, by revealing deep wisdom of life forces, and showing the creation of the universe itself. On the right, I have a couple images that are sort of derived around the DNA pattern and show encoded within the coils different images of sacred geometric principles. And on the bottom is the Vitruvian Man standing between two pillars with the Metatron's cube above and some other symbols. And what's beautiful about these symbols is that they absolutely are meme and they encode an understanding of a great deal without very many words at all. And here's our old friend Vivekananda, friend of the Theosophical tradition. And he says, the very reason for nature's existence is for the education of the soul. So by studying nature and using principles of sacred geometry, we can have a better understanding of the soul. So some of the core principles of sacred geometry are listed here. And I debated, should I add some other ones like the Vesica Pisces, which is that shape right there. But be that as it may, these are 6 core principles. First of all is the flower of life in the Vesica Pisces, which becomes and evolves into a series of mandalas in the seed of life symbol. There's the egg of life, the flower of life, and so on. The next is a group of Platonic solids developed by the great philosopher of Western tradition, Plato, that he portrayed as a fundament of all living things. And those are depicted in this glyph here, going around the circle, and the void in the top. Metatron's cube is the third one, and it's from the archangel name. And it's a representation of the Platonic forms along with some of the flower of life symbols. The next one is the golden mean, which we saw at the beginning, that ratio of 1.618. And the golden mean is also depicted as the Fibonacci series, which is a number progression. So there's more than one way to understand that principle. Number 5 is the Merkaba, and sometimes called the Star of David, and it's based on the Tree of Life and important in the study of Kabbalah. And finally, the Taurus or toroidal energy and some of the work of Tesla. So going forward, we'll take a closer look at these. So the Flower of Life mandala builds on the seed of life, and it's a series of images. So this is the seed of life, and this is the flower of life, which is a repeating pattern of the seed of life. This is the fruit of life, which is 13 circles all connected. So it's 6 on the outside, 6 in the center, and then a 7th in the middle. So that's sacred number 13. The egg of life is just the circles themselves. Within the flower of life, we can see the tree of life. And then this all leads to Metatron's cube. And we'll take a closer look at that later. Next is the Platonic solids, and they're represented here. The tetrahedron, which is 4 sides and of triangles. The hexahedron, which is a cube. The octahedron, which is the pyramid with 5 sides, 5 faces, and the icosahedron and the dodecahedron. The sacred geometry symbol Metatron's cube is made of a composite of the Platonic solids as well as the flower of life images. So here we have the cube, and here's the tetrahedron, and it's intersecting these circles. Here's the square intersecting the octahedron, the icosahedron, and then the dodecahedron, the coming forth as a star field. So this is an amazing thing. And within Plato's system, all of these solids can be contained within each other. And so this encodes that. And then we can see then this also takes its foundation from the flower of life images. The fourth one is the golden mean. And the golden mean is indicated by the symbol here. So that's called phi, which stands for the number 1.618. And this formula or this ratio occurs in all manner of life forms within the growth of an embryo and the growth of a plant. The progression from leaves on a stems is at that ratio. The amount that the embryo progresses through the stages of its development. The spiral that's indicated here is broken off into sections, and each section has that ratio to the prior section. And the growth of sunflower follow this pattern, and we looked at the seashell. This table here represents this Fibonacci series, and it's quite interesting. The golden mean can be seen through this line, and Pythagoras showed this. So if we just take a line of any length, the golden mean is this point at 1.61, and it's called A in the picture, and what's left is called B, and the ratio of A to the total line is 0.6. But what's this beautiful constant of nature and of these principles is that B, the distance of B is a 0.6 ratio to A. So this golden mean participates in that idea of a recurring and recursive universe that propagates itself. And some of it is through this numeric pattern, these constants. So A plus B is to A as A is to B. And again, close-ups of some of these patterns. The fifth one is the Merkaba, also called based on the Star of David. Here we can see the six-pointed star, but it is also considered a three-dimensional form. And this idea of a body in motion, the vehicle of light, and also related to the tree of life. This is a beautiful glyph that somebody developed. The next one is the Taurus, and this is our final principle of vortex energy. And these fields have been known, but it's only been a mere 150 years or so that we understood gravity, electricity and magnetics. And this toroidal form helps us have an algorithm for the movement of energy and frequencies. And Tesla worked with principles of 369, and there is so much going on in this area. I'm certainly not an expert in it, but it is remarkable. And it's also related to a Hindu yantra called the Sri Yantra. And there it is on this image. And the idea is that all of these constructs have some elemental similarities. And so here's the Taurus, and the Sri Yantra has been around for eons, and it's a meditative contemplation. We know about mantra meditation where you say a sound and repeat it. Well, yantra is where you look at an image, and this is composed of 9 intersecting triangles, and it's a very profound visualization practice. The Merkaba also is related to this idea of 9, and then here's the Vesica Pisces. So we'll move on. So applications of sacred geometry are first, we are very evident in buildings of worship, churches, cathedrals, mosques, the Great Pyramid of Egypt, the Stonehenge, and the many circular sites around the world. This is a ziggurat in Mesopotamia, Iran, I think. And we see it in classical art, evidence of the golden mean in buildings and in art design. Also within the Great Pyramid, the angle of the height to the base and the slant is evidence of the golden mean. And here's some examples of the golden mean being depicted in some of the work. This is Raphael, The Birth of Venus, and Leonardo da Vinci. And of course, we see it throughout nature and in religious symbols as well. This is a wonderful rendition of the golden mean in a website that is teaching fine art. And I believe that's a painting of Hypatia, the mathematician in Alexandria, who had a tragic ending by jealous men, if you will, showing the effects of the golden ratio and how they're demonstrated in these images. We also see a historical context for sacred geometry throughout the world and throughout the ages. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, we have ziggurats, cuneiform writing, the origination of the zodiac and timekeeping, and foundations for math and astronomy. In Egypt, the Nile, we have the Great Pyramid, temples and obelisk, reinforcing the idea of timekeeping and measure. There's a theory that the Great Pyramid encodes the measurement of the planet. Within China, the principles of harmony in the Tao, the interplay of yin and yang, opposite forces, the tradition of feng shui, temples, waterfalls, and control of elements in space. We also have the I Ching, a system of divination using hexagrams based on the numeric relationship of 2 and 3. An amazing system depicted here. In India, it's about forms and symbols, temples with intricate designs, and water cisterns. We also have the Sri Yantra showing the union of cosmic energies. The contemplation of this figure is a standard meditation practice, and it encodes, again, the principle of 9. From the Greek philosophers, Pythagoras, Plato, Euclid, is the matrix of our Western thought structures. And the golden ratio is formulated through the work of Pythagoras and others. We have architecture of theaters, temples, a social structure, the idea of democracy, and using sound and theater. From Rome, we have an evolution to using the arch as a system of water management with aqueducts and public baths. And of course, a continuation of temples and monastic spaces showing the harmony and proportion. From the pagan and nomadic cultures, we see circles, henges, and mounds showing stars and cycles, logging heroic events. So all of these various traditions give us a sense of the use of architecture and the use of geometry and architecture and the knowledge that was bequeathed to us. Turning to the modern era, from Rome through the Byzantine and medieval, we see the construction of basilicas and cathedrals. Here's the Hagia Sophia, known for its transcendence and light qualities, showing the squaring of the circle in another form. And also within that structure is an amazing cistern below ground. So one of the things that's very interesting about looking at geometry and architecture is the involvement of hydraulics and water management. Not a focus of this presentation, but something to at least give a nod to. And progressing to the Renaissance art, we see the rise of the self and a change from the traditional views of religion and ritual expressed in artists like Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, and this recognition of the sacred systems and the divine ratio in that work. So within the modern day, there are practices that we can use that help us apply sacred geometry in our daily lives and explore it and get to know it. The cross-legged pyramid pose meditation is a classic example embodying this idea of the architecture and the golden mean within our physical state. The Sri Yantra meditation is also another example. And there's other yantras that can also be meditated on. Another is Metatron forms and crystal grid contemplations, where you can make a crystal grid to emanate and express any intention or inquiry. Squares are known for stability, circles are known for oneness, triangles for energy. We can visualize sacred forms like the Metatron cube here, or we can simply draw and color, which is becoming a very popular form of meditation and relaxation. There are other forms, of course, but these are some things that we can do to build an acquaintanceship with the principles of sacred geometry. This is, again, showing the evolution of the flower of life through various emanations to a very beautiful rendition. The Metatron cube, which we described a bit earlier, is 6 circles intersecting at 6 edges, and each of these intersections allows for representation of the Platonic solids. And it also contains a total of 13 circles. And this is described in the Book of Enoch. It's also called two intersecting tetrasites, the Star of Parcheesi, and it has a numerical pattern of 5 rows with 1, 4, 3, 4, and 1. And it's also represented on the dollar bill in a tiny little glyph above the eagle's head. The Merkabah, which translates as light, spirit, body, is also called the chariot of light. And it represents the spirit and body counter-rotating in a field of light, kind of like what we see with the toroidal field. Another expression is wheels within wheels and spirals of energy. Within the Platonic solids, there is a great deal of information to look at, and this chart shows some of the primary features. It is echoed in the other chart over here, but it covers how many faces, the vertices, the edges, the element associated with it, and the type of form. So triangular, square, triangular, octagonal, and triangular again. Each of the 5 Platonic solids is associated with the 5 elements, and each has a primary degree and then a sum of all the angles in it. And these numbers are considered in sacred geometry to be somewhat constants of the universe. And it's very helpful to develop a familiarity and conversational knowledge of them. So from the tetrahedron, the total number of degrees is 720. The octahedron is 1440, which is a classical number we have heard before in many contexts. The hexahedron, the square, is 2160, and this comes up in timekeeping. The icosahedron is 3600, and the dodecahedron is 6480 degrees. There are other aspects looking at the faces, the points, and the edges, and even having a construct for what elements these represent is a good primary association to make with these forms. So fire is associated with the tetrahedron, air with the octahedron, the square cube is the element of earth, the solid matter. The icosahedron with its many faces is water. And then the dodecahedron is ether, the element of spirit. The icosahedron and dodecahedron are sort of inverse patterns of each other. The icosahedron has 20 faces and the dodecahedron has 12, whereas the icosahedron then has 12 points and the dodecahedron has 20. So they are interchanging the faces and the points. Another sort of harmony. We can go on and look at the Fibonacci series, which is a numeric pattern that describes the ratio of the golden mean. And it's depicted here in line 1. The Fibonacci series begins at 0.0 or nothing. And so 0 and 1 is 1. And the progression of this series is that we add the prior number to each other. So 1 and 1 is 2. And then 2 and 1 is 3. 3 and 2 is 5. And this difference between these progressive numbers and this generative sequence is 1.618. And this is this constant of the universe that is very profound and very significant in our understanding of life in the world. That table I looked at, we had seen earlier, goes up to several thousands, and key numbers on the Fibonacci series have been noted to be expressing in other aspects of science. So each number is the sum of the prior two. And in terms of growth, this is a very simple construct in that in order to go to the next level, you have to repeat, you have to double what you just did. So if you're at 1, you have to add 1 to get to the 2. If you want to progress, you have to add what was there, what you had accomplished before to that 2, and that becomes 3. And to go to the next level, you have to add what you had accomplished before. And so this is sort of a philosophical or a folkloric construct, if you will, in recognizing how this pattern plays out. I hope it's helpful to you. So here's some images depicting the growth and the spiral, again, this 2/3. And within the planetary relationship of Earth to the moon is this 1.61 ratio depicted here. The ratio 1.61 is also known through a formula, which is the 1 plus the square root of 5 divided by 2. And the way we find that is in this intersection with the Vesica Pisces. So the circle is the most primary geometric form, and it can be drawn with a string and a piece of chalk, and it is a clear and accurate circle that we can make using that line and the point. And the intersection is at the point of the radius, and it forms 2 squares or a rectangle. And from there, we can start to format triangles and other forms. So from this Vesica Pisces, we can get the square and the rectangle and then the triangle. And through that rendition, we can derive this formula. And in a study group, it's the kind of thing that can be done, and you can see it with a little effort. Another aspect is measuring the planet and squaring the circle. And this is a glyph from Egyptian lore showing the cubit. Within working with time and measurement, these numbers come out, and these are constants of also the Platonic solids. The number 2732, 432, 108, 360, and 1440. And again, all of this has factors with 9, and Tesla's insight shows us that. And 360 is, of course, the degrees in a circle. This is an interesting representation. So the 4 Platonic solids, when added together, equal 7,920, the mean diameter of the Earth. And this kind of crossing over of systems is something that is occurs quite a bit within the study of sacred geometry. The octahedron with the number 1440 is the number of minutes in a day. The representation for the degrees in a square is the diameter of the moon. And the icosahedron at 3600 is the number of seconds in an hour. There's another outstanding number called Plato's number, and it is 5040. And it's also the sum of the radii of the Earth and the moon, which is also the sum of the octahedron and the icosahedron. There's a scholar named Russell who worked with this, William Russell. So these are some of the things that on a closer view we can have a greater understanding about. For the number 2732, we can take a look at a few of these. The ratio of the Earth's diameter to the moon's diameter is 0.273. A circle and a square has four corners that are 27.32% of the total area. And this is important. When we square the circle, there are these edges of the square that are outside the perimeter of the circle, and it fits this number 2732. Some other examples, the freezing point and absolute zero relate to this number. There are 273 days in an average pregnancy, which is 10 sidereal months. The human menstrual cycle is 27.3 days, and the lunar period is 27.3 days. This number 273 also occurs with the sun. There are sunspots every 27.3 days. Water changes temperature at 273 Kelvin. So geodesy is the measure of Earth distance, and this became a gigantic inquiry of Newton, and it led him to determine the values of gravity. Of course, Aristophanes had come up with a reasonable measure for the diameter, the circumference of the Earth, within 500 feet. This is a temple in India, the Vitala temple, and these pillars are known for their musical resonance. There's a few of these sites. It's quite remarkable. These are examples of cymatic patterns, and we've seen the image of water being photographed with healthy vibes and not healthy. So when we have a pattern of continuity like this, it's a good thing. Tesla said, 9 is a point at which nature converges and diverges, flowing opposite directions from the center. 369, if only you knew the magnificence of the 369, then you would have the key to the universe. That's inspiring. So this is a picture of a rodent coil and with a Tesla coil next to it. And there's a lot of work going on with trying to harness the energy of the coils. This is the map depicting the rodent coil progress of movement and on that toroidal field. It's basically two different fields that are being represented. So the first one is the 369, but actually it's 936 or 963. The energy never goes 369. It always goes from 9 to 6 or 9 to 3. And there's a biflow cross. So if we have this idea of the 9 numbers in our 10 base system on this circular grid, energy is moving through the toroid in this pattern on one vector. And then the energy is moving in a secondary vector. So we have a bit of a duality here, the idea like yin and yang. And it's going from point 1 across in, if you follow the arrows with me. So, and this is considered an additive process, but it's also depicted as an additive on the right and a subtractive on the left. But so we go from 1 to 2. So 1 plus 1 equals 2. So we progress to the 2. And then 2 plus 2 is 4. So we progress to the point 4. So we've bypassed the 3, which is engaged in that other energy transform. And then from 4, we double it to 8. And so we cross over to the other part of the hemisphere here. And now we add this 8 and 8 is 16, and that composite number of 16, 6 and 1 yields 7. So we progress to the 7. And so that adds up to 16 and 16, 32. And the composite of 32 is 5. So again, we're going from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 7 and then to 5. And 5, we bypass 6 because that's in the other transit. And we go to 5, which is 64, and it yields a composite number of 1, and it takes us back. So these two energy flows are happening simultaneously within a toroidal field. This is another view of that pattern on the toroid. And here's a view of the energy patterns in different color. So the last part of the presentation is just a quick tour of sacred sites around the planet through time. Here's the Great Pyramid. And in Pyramidographia, John Grieve explains that it was measured in 1646, and this influenced Newton to discover the cubic foot, which has now been engraved on a plaque. These are some images of the squaring the circle within the Great Pyramid, and you can see there are these odd points, and this is reconciled in the fact that the Great Pyramid has 2 measures for the base. Here's the relationship of the Earth to the Moon in terms of the golden mean, and a depiction of Stonehenge. And this is the work of Scott Onstott, who's a current researcher who's done a lot with looking at sacred sites and correlation of the planet and the Great Pyramid. These are pyramids in Mexico. This is Chichen Itza, where I was honored to be able to participate in ceremonies with Mayan timekeepers in 1988. When there was a full moon, so the light effect was replicated at day and night, and that was the beginning of the last 20-year round of the Mayan calendar that led to the 2012 culmination that we are now past. And this is pyramids in North America. On the left is Cahokia at St. Louis, and on the right is the pyramid at Lake Mills, Wisconsin, and it's a smaller rendition of the Great Pyramid at Cahokia, which is about 13 acres on its base and is larger than the Great Pyramid of Egypt. And during the 1500s, about a population of 100,000 lived around this site in Illinois, Missouri and Illinois. And this site, the smaller one in Wisconsin, is recognized as a satellite of the Cahokia culture. And they have identified that this is clearly evidence of a migration north from star gazing cultures in Mexico and South America, with Venus points being indicated on these sites. This is the zodiac, which is a very fundamental principle also of sacred geometry encoded in a couple sites. And we also do see that in China even. And some of the pyramid temple sites at Egypt, which are considered astronomy and possibly water management sites as well. And the great temple, the Parthenon. It is something to note that the pillars are all different sizes and widths. It's very interesting. They're not one is alike. And that is gives the sense of this perfect squareness, but it's actually one of a kind. Here's a chart showing some of the ratios evident in the site and a long view. The Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. Again, the idea of squaring the circle. And this is the basement with a gigantic cistern, if you will, calling it the basement. the theater at Epidaurus, and this is Vitruvius' plan for a Roman theater based on the Greek theaters. And Vitruvius was a Roman engineer, and where Leonardo da Vinci came up with the Vitruvian Man. And this is the Pantheon, and a little bit about Vitruvius with a water wheel. And the Pantheon kind of is a homage to the Hagia Sophia that led to the evolution of the Gothic architecture and the amazing work of the cathedrals in the medieval era. This is Notre Dame and some markers indicating where the solstice and equinox points are indicated. A Templar temple in London, and these are always circular structures. Some amazing glyphs in Canterbury and Uzbekistan. The Hopi Kiva in Arizona and 2 medicine wheels. And just a nod to the recognition of how geometry plays a great part in water management systems. And it was quite an accomplishment, the use of the water wheel. So that completes our journey into sacred geometry today. And I hope you have learned something, perhaps recognized the evidence of the golden mean in your world, or a discovery of earth measures encoded in the Great Pyramid. And my final thought is that the earth is a temple and the human is a temple, and it's sacred and finite. Here's some summary. Geometry is everywhere. It's the big G. This is a sampler of key concepts, and there's quite a lot to the study of sacred geometry. The ancients employed geometry for public good, to encode knowledge as well, a system of planet Earth timekeeping, the human body, nature, consciousness, and more. It's knowledge protected and taught by all traditions, including the Masons, the Templars, the Kabbalah, and other sacred traditions. Key components are the Platonic solids, the Vesica Pisces, the flower of life, the Merkaba. Sacred architecture and hydraulics are used in every continent and every culture. A principle is squaring the circle, which leads to standards of measurement and the cubic foot, the golden mean, the Fibonacci series, and Tesla's torus and vortex math, as well as the yantra, contemplation, and the hexagram in Chinese I Ching. So contemplate sacred forms to learn. And 2 wonderful images to orient our brains. So thank you very much. I hope you have taken away something from today's program, and I hope to see you again.